I'm Emily Harper, and this is my story. A tale of betrayal, survival, and a secret so devastating it would shatter my family's perfect world. If you're watching from Seattle, New York, Sydney, or anywhere else, I invite you to buckle up, hit that like button, subscribe, and brace yourself for the moment my parents' faces froze when they saw what their cruelty cost me. Where are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let me take you back to the night my life unraveled. A night so dark it nearly swallowed me whole. The rain came down in sheets, hammering the roof of my beat-up Toyota Corolla as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my heart pounding like a war drum. It was September 2010, and I was 19, pregnant and running for my life. The streets of Seattle's Rainier Valley blurred past, neon signs bleeding into the night, their colors distorted by the storm. My breath hitched, fogging the windshield, and I swiped at it with a trembling hand, desperate to see the road. I could still hear my father's voice, his words slicing through me like a blade. "You've defiled our name, Emily. You fix this sin, or you're no daughter of mine." He'd cornered me an hour earlier in a deserted alley behind Grace Covenant Church, the place where he preached purity and salvation to Seattle's elite. Richard Harper, city councilman, deacon, and my father, stood there in his tailored suit, his face twisted with rage. In his hand he clutched the silver cross necklace, a family heirloom passed down from his grandmother, the one he'd always said symbolized our legacy. "This," he'd screamed, shaking it in my face, "is what you've tarnished?" His eyes, usually so composed for the cameras, burned with a fury I'd never seen. He'd found the pregnancy test I'd hidden in my bathroom, and now he was demanding I fix it. His code for dragging me to a clinic to erase the life growing inside me. I was 2 months pregnant, carrying the child of Liam Carter, the boy I loved, the boy who was dying. But my father didn't know that. He didn't know about Liam's leukemia, the brutal chemotherapy, or the choice we'd made to create this baby as his legacy. All he saw was shame, a stain on the Harper name, a threat to his pristine reputation. "You're coming with me now," he'd growled, grabbing my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "We're ending this tonight." I'd yanked free, stumbling backward, my sneakers slipping on the wet pavement. "No, Dad, please," I'd begged, tears mixing with the rain. "You don't understand. Liam's sick. This baby—" "Enough lies," he roared, stepping closer, the cross glinting under a flickering streetlight. For a moment, I thought he might hit me, his hand raised, trembling with rage. That's when I ran, my heart thundering, my breath ragged, dodging puddles and broken glass until I reached my car. I didn't look back as I peeled out of the alley, tires screeching, the image of his furious face seared into my mind. Now, as I sped through the storm, the city felt like a maze closing in. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, but I ignored it, knowing it was probably him, or maybe my mother, Margaret, with her silent complicity. My brother, Daniel, wouldn't call. He'd already made his stance clear, accusing me of inventing Liam's illness to cover my sin. I was alone, utterly alone, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. The realization hit me like a punch, stealing my breath, and for a moment I let the tears come, hot and unstoppable. The road curved toward the West Seattle Bridge, a narrow stretch suspended over the Duwamish River, its lights barely visible through the downpour. I was halfway across when headlights flared behind me, blinding in the rearview mirror. A black SUV loomed, tailgating so close I could see the driver's silhouette. My pulse spiked. Was it my father? Had he followed me? Or was it someone else, some stranger in this rough part of town? I pressed the gas, the Corolla's engine whining, but the SUV kept pace, its horn blaring, a relentless predator. Panic clawed at my chest. I glanced at the dashboard. Quarter tank of gas, no plan, no safe haven. The shelter where I volunteered was too far, and Liam's parents, Helen and Paul, were at the hospital with him, their own world collapsing under medical bills and grief. I couldn't burden them. The SUV swerved, pulling alongside me, and I caught a glimpse of two men inside, their faces shadowed. One raised something. A gun? My stomach lurched, and I jerked the wheel, veering toward the bridge's railing. Metal scraped metal, sparks flying, and I screamed, wrestling the car back onto the road. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, as if they could hear me over the storm. The SUV dropped back, but I wasn't safe yet. The bridge was slick, the wind howling, and my tires skidded as I pushed the Corolla to its limit. Up ahead, a sign warned of a sharp curve, but I was going too fast, my vision blurred by rain and fear. The car fishtailed, the world tilting, and for a heart-stopping moment, I saw the river below, black and churning, ready to swallow me whole. I slammed on the brakes, the car spinning, and crashed into a ditch on the far side of the bridge, the impact jarring my bones. Silence followed, broken only by the rain and my gasping sobs. My ankle throbbed, sprained from bracing against the floorboard, but I was alive. The SUV was gone, its headlights vanished into the night. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and saw a missed call from Helen Carter. No message. My heart sank. Liam? Was he worse? Had he slipped away while I was running from my father's wrath? I couldn't think about it, not now. I had to move, to find somewhere safe for me and the baby growing inside me. I climbed out, wincing as my ankle buckled, and limped to a storm drain under the bridge, its concrete mouth offering temporary shelter. The rain soaked my clothes, my hair plastered to my face, but I crouched there, hugging my knees, one hand resting on my still flat stomach. "We're okay," I whispered to my unborn child, though I didn't believe it. "I'll keep you safe," I promised. But how? I had $20 in my pocket, a half-dead car, and a family that had just disowned me. The secret of my pregnancy? The truth about Liam's illness and our desperate choice burned inside me, a truth my family refused to hear. And now, it was me against the world. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the life I thought was perfect, the life that hid cracks so deep they'd eventually shatter everything. I grew up in a Queen Anne Hill mansion, the kind you see in magazines, with ivy climbing the brick walls and a view of Puget Sound that made strangers stop and stare. My father, Richard Harper, was Seattle royalty, a city councilman who shook hands with mayors and tech moguls, his face plastered on campaign billboards promising family values, Seattle strong. At Grace Covenant Church, he was a deacon, his sermons on purity and discipline drawing crowds who hung on his every word. He was the man everyone wanted to be, or at least to know. My mother, Margaret, was his perfect counterpart, an interior designer whose work graced the pages of Architectural Digest. She turned our home into a showpiece, marble floors, custom chandeliers, and a dining room that hosted charity galas. Her smile was warm, her laugh practiced, but behind closed doors she deferred to my father, her voice rarely rising above a murmur. I used to watch her arrange flowers for church events, her hands steady, and wonder if she was happy, or if she just played the part so well she'd forgotten how to feel. Then there was my brother, Daniel, 2 years older and the golden child of the Harper dynasty. A Stanford grad by 22, he was launching a tech startup that had venture capitalists buzzing. Dad would clap him on the back at Sunday brunch, saying, "That's my boy, the future of Seattle." Daniel soaked it up, his confidence bordering on arrogance, while I sat quietly, invisible, hoping for a scrap of that pride to fall my way. I wasn't unloved, not exactly. I was the good daughter, straight-A student, volunteer at the downtown homeless shelter, always home by curfew. But I was never enough for my father. His approval was a currency he doled out sparingly, and I spent my childhood chasing it, memorizing Bible verses, ironing my church dresses, smiling through his lectures on modesty. Grace Covenant was our world, its stained glass windows casting colored light over our lives, its rules shaping every choice. "We're Harpers," Dad would say. "We set the standard." That standard felt like a cage, but I didn't see it until I met Liam Carter. It was my junior year at Lakeside School, Seattle's private prep academy where tech heirs and old money kids mingled. I was 17, awkward in my cardigans, when I was paired with Liam for a music theory project on Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. He was different, tall, with piercing green eyes and dark hair that fell over his forehead, a violinist who carried his instrument like it was part of him, while other boys bragged about their parents' yachts or their SAT scores. Liam volunteered at an animal rescue and wrote melodies that made my heart ache. We met in the school library, surrounded by dusty books and the hum of fluorescent lights. "You hear the longing in this chord?" he said, playing a snippet on his phone, his voice low and earnest. Beethoven was saying something he couldn't put into words. I nodded, captivated, and we talked for hours, the project forgotten. Liam saw the world differently, not through the lens of status or wealth, but through music and meaning. "You're not like the others, Emily," he told me that day. "You see what's real." Our love grew slowly, deliberately, in stolen moments. Late-night jam sessions in his cramped Capitol Hill apartment, where he'd play his violin and I'd hum along, dreaming of a future beyond Seattle's expectations. We'd lie on his thrift store couch, planning our escape. Him to Juilliard for music composition, me to the University of Washington for nursing. "We'll get a tiny place in New York," he'd say, his fingers tracing mine. Subway rides, coffee shops, music everywhere. I believed him, believed in us, because with Liam, anything felt possible. But we were careful, raised in religious households where physical intimacy was a line drawn in stone. My father approved of Liam, or at least the version he knew. A scholarship student from a respectable family, polite and ambitious. "He's the only boy I'd trust near my daughter," Dad would joke, clapping Liam on the shoulder at church picnics. But he didn't know Liam's progressive views, his quiet rebellion against the rules that bound us, and he didn't know how deeply I'd fallen, how Liam's music and his heart had become my world. Then, just after graduation, our dreams crumbled. Liam started feeling tired, bruised easily, his skin pale under the summer sun. At first, he blamed senior year stress, but a blood test at Seattle General changed everything. Acute myeloid leukemia, the doctor said, his voice clinical, as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb. 20% survival rate without aggressive treatment. I sat in that sterile hospital room, holding Liam's hand, his fingers cold despite the blanket draped over him. "I'm not scared of dying, Em," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm scared of leaving no mark on this world, of being forgotten." We spent months in the oncology ward, the beep of monitors our constant companion. Chemotherapy ravaged him. His hair fell out, his frame shrank, but his spirit held. He'd sketch melodies on hospital napkins, humming through the pain, and I'd read him poetry to keep him grounded. One night, between treatment cycles, he squeezed my hand, his eyes bright with a desperate idea. "I want to leave something behind," he said. "If I don't make it, I want a part of me to stay with you. A child, Em. Our child." It wasn't a reckless whim. We talked for hours, weighing every angle, our faith, our fears, our love. It was a choice born of mortality, a way to defy the cancer stealing him away. 2 months later, I stared at a positive pregnancy test, joy and terror colliding in my chest. This baby was Liam's legacy, a piece of him that would live on. But how could I tell my parents? With their rigid beliefs and their obsession with appearances, I planned to wait, to sit them down with Liam to explain the love and loss behind our decision. I didn't know then that I'd never get the chance. The storm drain was cold, the concrete biting through my soaked jeans, but it was safer than the open road. My ankle pulsed with pain, and my phone battery was down to 10%. I checked the missed call from Helen. No voicemail, just a text. "Come to the hospital when you can. Liam's not good." My heart seized. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, but I was stranded. My car wrecked, my body trembling from cold and shock. The memory of the SUV haunted me. Those men, the glint of what might have been a gun. Had they been after me? Or was I just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Seattle's underbelly was no stranger to violence, and I'd landed right in it. I thought of my family's mansion, just 10 miles away, with its warm lights and soft beds. I could go back, beg for forgiveness, agree to my father's demands. But the thought of betraying Liam, of erasing our baby, made my stomach churn. No, I'd rather die out here than give in. This child was all I had left of him, and I'd protect it with everything I had. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and I crawled out, limping back to my car. The front bumper was crumpled, but the engine sputtered to life, a small miracle. I drove slowly, headlights off, to avoid attention, toward the only place I could think of, a 24-hour diner in Georgetown, the Rusty Anchor, where I'd once grabbed coffee with Liam. It was a gritty spot, frequented by truckers and night owls, but it had a payphone and a bathroom. I needed to clean up, call Helen, figure out my next move. Inside, the diner smelled of grease and stale coffee, the fluorescent lights harsh against my tear-streaked face. A waitress, her name tag reading Patty, eyed me warily. "You okay, hun?" she asked, her voice gruff but not unkind. I nodded, too exhausted to explain, and slid into a booth, my wet clothes sticking to the vinyl. I ordered a coffee I couldn't afford, just to justify sitting there, and used the payphone to call Helen. "Emily," she said, her voice heavy with grief. "Liam's in a coma. The doctors, they don't think he'll wake up." The words hit like a physical blow, and I leaned against the wall, sliding to the floor, the receiver pressed to my ear. "I'm so sorry," she continued. "We're here, Paul and I. Can you come?" I'm trying," I choked out. Things are bad, Helen. My parents found out about the baby. They kicked me out." There was a long pause, then a muffled sob. "Oh, Emily, you're family now. Come to us. We'll figure it out together." I hung up, tears streaming, and returned to my booth, where Patty had left a plate of fries I hadn't ordered. "On the house," she muttered, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to thank her, to tell her how much that small kindness meant, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I ate, the salt stinging my cracked lips, and planned my next step. The hospital was 5 miles away. I could drive there, stay with Liam, maybe sleep in the waiting room, but what then? I had no job, no home, no plan. And the secret I carried, the truth about Liam's illness and our baby, felt like a bomb waiting to detonate. As I sat there, the diner's door swung open, and 2 men walked in, their boots heavy on the linoleum. My blood ran cold. They were the men from the SUV, their faces now clear under the lights, one with a scar across his cheek, the other with a tattoo snaking up his neck. They scanned the room, and when their eyes landed on me, Scarface smirked, nudging his partner. I grabbed my keys, my heart racing, and slipped out the side door, ignoring Patty's confused look. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was thick with mist. I sprinted to my car, my ankles screaming, and locked the doors just as the men emerged from the diner. They didn't approach, just stood there, watching, their silhouettes menacing against the neon sign. I started the engine, my hands shaking, and drove toward the hospital, checking my rear-view mirror every second. Were they following me? Why me? I was nobody, just a pregnant teenager with nothing to steal. But Seattle's streets held dangers I was only beginning to understand, and I'd stumbled into something, or someone, that wanted me gone. By the time I reached Seattle General, my body was trembling, adrenaline fading into bone-deep exhaustion. I parked in the visitor lot, my car hidden between 2 vans, and limped to the oncology ward. Helen met me at the elevator, her face etched with worry. "You're hurt," she said, noticing my limp, but I waved it off. "I need to see him," I whispered. She nodded, leading me to Liam's room, where machines hummed and his chest rose faintly under the hospital blanket. I sank into the chair beside him, taking his hand, his skin cold and fragile. "I'm here," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm keeping our promise, Liam. Our baby's safe." But as I sat there, the weight of the night crashed over me. The alley, my father's rage, the SUV, the bridge. I was 19, pregnant, homeless, and hunted by shadows I didn't understand. The secret of my baby's origin burned inside me, a truth my family had rejected, a truth that would one day destroy their perfect world. And as I held Liam's hand, not knowing if he'd ever wake, I made a vow. I'd survive. For him, for our child, for the life we dreamed of. No matter what it took, I'd write my own story, one where rejection became resilience and pain became purpose. What would you do if your family turned their backs on you? If the world seemed determined to break you? Have you ever faced a moment so dark you didn't know if you'd make it through? Share your stories below, and let's walk this path together. Because sometimes, our deepest wounds become our greatest gifts. I'm Emily Harper, and if you're still with me after that stormy night on the West Seattle Bridge, thank you. This is the part of my story where the world tried to break me, where every step felt like a battle, and where I learned that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about holding on to the pieces of yourself that matter most. If you're watching from Seattle, Los Angeles, London, or anywhere else, hit that like button, subscribe, and share where you're tuning in from in the comments below. Brace yourself, because this chapter is about the nights I spent sleeping in my car, the betrayals that cut deeper than knives, and the moment I held Liam's hand as he slipped away, leaving me to carry our dream alone. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair, the kind of sterile scent that clings to your skin and never quite washes out. It was late September 2010, and I sat beside Liam's bed in Seattle General's oncology ward, my sprained ankle throbbing, my clothes still damp from the rain. The machines beeped in a steady rhythm, mocking the chaos of my life outside these walls. Liam's hand was cold in mine, his fingers thin and fragile, a far cry from the strong hands that once danced across his violin strings. His chest rose and fell, but his eyes stayed closed, lost in the coma that had claimed him while I was running from my father's rage. "Stay with me, Liam," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the ventilator. "I need you. Our baby needs you." But the truth was sinking in, heavy as the storm clouds outside. Liam was fading, and I was alone. 19, pregnant, and homeless, with my family's rejection burning like a fresh wound. My father's words echoed in my head. "You're no daughter of mine." My mother's silence, my brother's accusations, they were a chorus of abandonment, louder than the rain that had nearly drowned me on that bridge. I'd made it to the hospital after escaping the men in the SUV, their faces still haunting me. Scarface with his cruel smirk, Tattoo with his cold stare. I didn't know if they were after me specifically, or if I'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time, but the fear lingered, a shadow that followed me everywhere. My battered Toyota Corolla was parked in the hospital lot, hidden between delivery vans, my only shelter. Now that my family's Queen Anne Hill mansion was a locked door, I had $20 left, a half-tank of gas, and a secret that could destroy the Harper legacy if they ever bothered to listen. This baby wasn't a mistake. It was Liam's last wish, our act of love in the face of death. Helen Carter, Liam's mother, found me in the room just before dawn. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face etched with the kind of grief that ages you overnight. "Emily, you can't stay here all night," she said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're hurt. You need rest." "I can't leave him," I said, my voice cracking. "If he wakes up..." She didn't argue, just pulled up a chair and sat beside me, her presence a quiet anchor. Helen and Paul, Liam's father, had been my lifeline these past months, welcoming me into their modest Tacoma home during Liam's treatments, never judging me for loving their son. But their own world was crumbling. Medical bills piling up, their savings drained by experimental drugs that hadn't worked. I couldn't burden them with my homelessness, not now. "I'm so sorry about your parents," Helen said after a long silence. "You're family to us, Emily. Whatever happens, you and the baby have a place with us." Her words broke something inside me, and I cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. Family. The word felt foreign. A dream I'd lost the moment my father slammed that silver cross necklace in my face. But Helen's kindness gave me something to cling to, a spark of hope in the darkness. The next few weeks were a blur of survival, each day a test of how much I could endure. I lived in my Corolla, parking in the hospital lot to stay close to Liam. By day, I'd visit him, holding his hand, reading him the poetry we'd loved. Whitman, Dickinson, anything to keep him tethered to me. By night, I'd curl up in the back seat, a thrift store blanket over me, one hand on my stomach, whispering promises to my unborn child. "We'll make it," I'd say, though I had no idea how. The car smelled of mildew and fast food, the windows fogging with my breath. But it was mine, a fragile sanctuary in a city that felt increasingly hostile. Bathing was a humiliating ritual. I'd sneak into the hospital's public restrooms, washing my hair in the sink with cheap shampoo, avoiding the curious stares of nurses and visitors. My clothes, jeans, a few t-shirts, a hoodie, were stuffed in a duffel bag, and I'd rotate them, hoping no one noticed the stains or the smell of desperation. Hunger was a constant companion, my $20 long gone, spent on gas, and a single burger that I'd stretched over 2 days. I was dizzy, exhausted, my body screaming for rest, but I couldn't stop. Liam was slipping away, and my baby needed me to keep going. I found work at the Rusty Anchor, a 24-hour diner in Georgetown, a gritty corner of Seattle where neon signs flickered and the air smelled of diesel. The manager, Patty, was a chain-smoking woman with a voice like gravel and a heart she tried to hide. "You look like you're running from something," she said during my interview, eyeing my bruised ankle and hollow cheeks. "I don't care. Just show up and don't steal." The diner was a world of its own. Truckers nursing coffee, drunks slurring at the counter, and waitresses who moved like they'd seen it all. I worked the graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., pouring coffee and dodging hands that lingered too long. The harassment was relentless. Leers from patrons, crude comments about my growing belly. "What's a pretty thing like you doing pregnant and alone?" one man slurred, his breath sour with whiskey. I'd smile tightly, swallow my fear, and keep moving, the tips barely enough to buy food and gas, but every dollar was a step towards survival, a way to keep my promise to Liam. The exhaustion was crushing, so I took a second job stocking shelves at a 24/7 convenience store in Pioneer Square, working 8 a.m. to noon. The store was a fluorescent-lit hell, its aisles cluttered with expired snacks and customers who eyed me like I was part of the inventory. I'd lift crates, my back aching, my vision blurring, and more than once I collapsed in the stockroom, waking to the manager shaking me. "Get up, kid," he'd growl. "You're not paid to sleep." I dragged myself back to work, fueled by stale coffee and the thought of my baby, Liam's legacy depending on me. One night at the Rusty Anchor, I met Sarah Mitchell, a nurse who came in after her shift at Seattle Children's Hospital. She was 25, a single mom with a 4-year-old daughter, her eyes tired but kind. She noticed me dozing in the break room, my head on a table, fries untouched beside me. "You okay?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. I mumbled something about being fine, but she saw through it. "You're living in your car, aren't you?" she said, her voice gentle but firm. I froze, shame flooding me, but she didn't judge. "I've been there," she said. "Not exactly, but close. You can't keep going like this, especially pregnant." Sarah offered me her apartment's couch, a cramped one-bedroom in Ballard where she lived with her daughter Zoe. "It's not much," she said, "but it's better than a car." I tried to refuse, pride and embarrassment warring inside me, but she wouldn't hear it. "One mom to another," she insisted. "Take the help." That night I followed her home, my Corolla sputtering behind her beat-up Ford. The couch was lumpy, The apartment smelled of diaper cream and microwave dinners, but it was warm, safe, a lifeline I hadn't dared hope for. Liam's condition worsened as October bled into November. The doctors stopped the chemotherapy, his organs failing under the cancer's relentless assault. I spent every free moment at the hospital, my belly now visibly rounding, drawing whispers from nurses who didn't know my story. Helen and Paul were there too, their faces gray with grief, but they never wavered in their support. "You're carrying our grandchild," Helen told me one night, her hand on mine. "You're our daughter now, no matter what." But the world outside kept testing me, each blow harder than the last. The first came from an unexpected source. Jessica Tate, a former classmate from Lakeside School, now a stringer for a sleazy tabloid. She'd heard rumors about my pregnancy and my father's disownment, and she cornered me outside the diner one night, her phone recording. "Emily Harper, the councilman's daughter, pregnant and homeless," she sneered. "Give me $5,000, 0 cents, or this story hits every gossip site in Seattle. Your dad's campaign will tank." I had no money, no way to pay her off. The only thing of value I owned was Liam's violin, a vintage instrument he'd played with such passion it seemed to hold his soul. Selling it felt like betraying him, but I had no choice. I took it to a pawn shop, my heart breaking as the clerk handed me $4,500, 0 cents, barely enough to cover Jessica's demand. "Take it or leave it," he said. I took it, paid Jessica, and cried myself to sleep on Sarah's couch, the empty violin case a reminder of what I'd lost. Then came my father's next move, a blow that shook me to my core. Richard, learning of my pregnancy through church gossip, sent a lawyer to Sarah's apartment with a custody threat. "Mr. Harper believes you're an unfit mother," the lawyer said, his suit crisp against the peeling wallpaper. "Living in poverty, no stable home. He's prepared to seek custody of the child once it's born." The words were a knife, twisting in my gut. My father, who'd thrown me out, now wanted to steal my baby to save it from me. I hired a pro bono attorney through a women's shelter, a fierce woman named Carla who fought back, but the stress triggered panic attacks, my chest tightening, my vision spotting as I imagined losing Liam's child to the man who'd rejected us. At work, the hits kept coming. At the assisted living facility where I'd taken a better pay evening shift, a jealous coworker, Brenda, falsified records, accusing me of stealing painkillers. The accusation was a lie, born of her resentment at my nursing school ambitions, but it nearly cost me everything. I was suspended pending investigation, my scholarship at risk, my dreams of becoming a nurse hanging by a thread. Sarah saved me, digging through shift logs to prove Brenda's sabotage, exposing her to the facility's director. Brenda was fired, but the ordeal left me shaken, my trust in others fractured. The streets of Seattle added their own dangers. One night, walking home from the convenience store, I stumbled into a gang dispute in an alley near Pioneer Square. Shots rang out, a man fell, blood pooling on the pavement, and I froze, hidden behind a dumpster. The gang leader, a man with a shaved head and a snake tattoo, spotted me. "You didn't see nothing," he hissed, his gun glinting. "Snitch, and you're dead. Your kid too." Terrified, I nodded, fleeing to Sarah's apartment, but the threat forced me to move Noah, still unborn but already my world, to a safer place. I couldn't risk staying in Ballard, not with eyes watching. The final blow was the hospital bill nightmare. When Noah was born prematurely at 26 weeks, a medical emergency that nearly killed me, his NICU stay racked up $200,000, 0 cents in debt. The hospital's billing department sent letters threatening to sue, their cold legalese a daily reminder of my vulnerability. Desperate, I took a third job as a courier in Seattle's roughest neighborhoods, delivering packages in areas where police rarely patrolled. The pay was better, but the risk was constant. Every shadowed alley, every stranger's glance a potential threat. I'd drive with one hand on the wheel, the other on my growing belly, praying I'd make it through another night. Noah's birth was a miracle and a crucible. I went into labor during a November storm, alone in Sarah's apartment. The pain so intense I could barely dial 911. By the time I reached the hospital, I was hemorrhaging, my vision fading as doctors shouted, "Stay with us, Emily!" One yelled, but I was slipping, my thoughts only of Liam and our baby. I woke in the ICU, tubes in my arms, a nurse telling me Noah was alive but fighting in the NICU, all 5 pounds of him hooked to machines. I cried then, not for the pain or the debt, but for the tiny boy who carried Liam's chin and my eyes, a living piece of the love we'd fought for. Liam never met his son. He died the night before Noah's birth, during another storm that rattled the hospital windows. I was at his side, holding his hand when he stirred, his eyes fluttering open for the first time in weeks. He whispered, his voice a faint rasp. "Tell our baby I loved them." With trembling fingers, he slipped a ruby ring, his mother's, onto my finger, a final gift. "Love you, always," he said, and then he was gone. The monitors flatlining, the room filling with nurses as I screamed his name, my world collapsing. The funeral was a blur of grief and isolation. I stood at the back of Grace Covenant Church, my pregnancy impossible to hide, my body still weak from labor. Churchgoers whispered, their eyes judging, their words a low hum of gossip. My parents were absent, their absence louder than any sermon. Helen and Paul stood with me, their arms around me, but I felt the weight of every stare, every muttered shame. I clutched Liam's ring, now on a chain around my neck, and vowed to protect Noah, to give him the life Liam had dreamed of. The months after Liam's death were the darkest of my life. I moved back to Sarah's couch, Noah in a second-hand crib beside me, his tiny cries piercing the fog of my grief. Postpartum depression hit hard. Days blurring into nights where I'd stare at the ceiling, unable to move, unable to feel anything but loss. Sarah kept me going, her no-nonsense kindness a lifeline. "You're stronger than you know," she'd say, handing me a bottle for Noah. "You've got this." But the threats kept coming. My father's custody scare lingered, his lawyer sending letters even after Carla's defense. The hospital bills mounted, each one a reminder of the $200,000 0 cents I'd never pay off. Jessica's blackmail had drained me, and the gang leader's threat forced me to avoid Pioneer Square, cutting my career shifts. I was drowning, my body and mind pushed to the brink, when salvation came from an unexpected source. Teresa Nguyen, my high school Spanish teacher, found me one freezing December night, my car broken down on a rural road outside Seattle. Noah, 3 months old, was burning with a fever, his cries weak and listless. The car's engine had died in a blizzard, no cell signal, no help for miles. I'd wrapped Noah in my coat, trudging through snow toward a distant gas station, my body numb, my vision fading. I was ready to give up, to let the cold take us, when headlights cut through the storm. Teresa's SUV pulled over, her face a mix of shock and determination. "Emily, get in!" she shouted, opening the door. She drove us to the ER, where doctors diagnosed Noah with a severe ear infection, warning it could have spread to his brain if we'd waited longer. In the hospital, Teresa listened as I poured out my story. Liam's death, my family's betrayal, the carjacking, the fire, the mugging, the gang threat, the bills. She didn't flinch, just held my hand, her eyes steady. "You're not alone anymore," she said. "You're coming home with me." Teresa's basement in her modest Capitol Hill home became our refuge. It was small but warm, with a daybed, a portable crib, and a tiny bathroom. "This is temporary," she said, "but take your time. You're safe here." Her kindness broke me open, tears I'd held back for months spilling out. With a roof over our heads and Teresa watching Noah, I could breathe, could think beyond the next meal or the next. Teresa saw something in me I'd forgotten. Potential. "You're too smart for dead-end jobs," she told me one night over dinner, Noah asleep in his crib. "What about nursing school? You wanted that before everything fell apart." The idea felt impossible. College was a dream I'd buried with Liam's diagnosis. But she helped me apply for online nursing programs, secured scholarships through her social work connections, and worked out a schedule so I could study and still work. "Liam's gone," she said, "but his dream for you isn't. Make it happen for Noah." A year later, another miracle arrived. A lawyer contacted me about Liam's estate. He'd taken out a $50,000 0-cents life insurance policy during a brief remission, naming me and our unborn child as beneficiaries. His participation in an experimental cancer trial had also entitled Noah to a $500,000 0-cents medical trust, accessible for education when he turned 18. The insurance money was freedom, a chance to focus on school, to move beyond survival. I used part of it to buy a small bungalow in Capitol Hill, a 2-bedroom with a tiny yard where Noah could play. The day we moved in, I stood in the empty living room, Noah toddling at my feet, and cried with gratitude. From a car to a home in 2 years, from abandoned to anchored. Noah was my light in those years. By 4, he showed Liam's genius, playing simple melodies on a thrift store piano with an intuition that stole my breath. He won local competitions, his tiny hands drawing crowds, his music a bridge to the father he'd never know. I graduated nursing school with honors, landing a job at Seattle Children's Hospital, where my work with pediatric patients felt like a calling. By 30, I was oncology director, my career a testament to the resilience I'd fought for. Liam Carter Foundation was born from a $5 million 0-cents settlement from the pharmaceutical company whose trial Liam had joined. Their breakthrough drug, built on his sacrifice, saved thousands, and the settlement funded Carter House, a housing complex near the hospital for pediatric cancer families. Noah, at 13, became its heart, his music raising funds, his talent earning him the National Young Composers Award. His piece, Echoes of You, performed at Carnegie Hall, was a love letter to Liam, and a 60 Minutes feature on the foundation brought our story to the world, including my estranged family. One night, an email from my brother Daniel changed everything. "We saw you on TV," he wrote. "Dad's dying of heart failure. They want to meet Noah." My therapist urged caution, and I set boundaries, but the reunion was seismic. At my Mercer Island estate, my parents and Daniel faced Noah, Liam's mirror image, and Richard collapsed, clutching his chest, EMTs rushing in. Over Noah's piano, I told them everything. Liam's cancer, our love, my struggle. Richard admitted his shame. Margaret revealed a secret scrapbook of my achievements, and Daniel confessed to fueling their rejection with lies. We began rebuilding, slowly, with dinners and therapy, Noah at the center. On the 15th anniversary of Liam's death, Noah performed at Carter House, Richard delivering a televised apology that healed wounds I hadn't known still bled. Our family, broken but mending, stood together, a testament to second chances. As I sit here, reflecting on the journey from that stormy night to this moment, I'm struck by how pain can forge something unbreakable. I was 19 when my world collapsed, a pregnant girl in a car, hunted by shadows, rejected by the people who should have loved me most. But I survived. Not just survived, but thrived. Noah, now 14, is my heart, his music a living echo of Liam's soul. The Liam Carter Foundation has grown, with 3 housing centers and a scholarship program for young musicians facing illness. My career as oncology director at Seattle Children's Hospital is my purpose, a way to give back to the community that saved me. My family's return wasn't a fairy tale. Forgiveness is a process, not a destination, and we navigate it with therapy, honesty, and time. Richard's health is fragile, but his apology, broadcast to thousands, was a step toward healing. Margaret's scrapbook, filled with clippings of my nursing school graduation and Noah's awards, is a reminder that love, however flawed, can persist. Daniel, now a humbled CEO, is a brother again, his daughters calling Noah cousin with joy. Helen and Paul, Liam's parents, remain our rock, their visits from Arizona filled with stories of the boy we all loved. Seattle, with its rain and its resilience, is my home. The city that nearly broke me gave me Sarah, Teresa, and a community that became family when blood failed. The ruby ring around my neck, Liam's last gift, is a talisman, a reminder that love transcends death. Noah's music, his Echoes of You now performed worldwide, carries Liam's legacy into the future, a melody of loss and triumph. To those watching, I ask, what's your story? Have you faced rejection, fought through darkness, found strength in unexpected places? Share in the comments, because your voice matters. Life doesn't follow neat scripts. Sometimes the people who should love us fail us. Sometimes strangers become saviors. Sometimes our deepest wounds birth our greatest gifts. I learned that my worth isn't defined by who walked away, but by how I chose to walk forward. I chose resilience, purpose, and love. For Liam, for Noah, for myself. If this story resonated, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Let's keep building a community where pain becomes power, where every scar tells a story of survival. Thank you for walking this path with me. Here's to writing our own endings, no matter how dark the beginning.